God bless you. This is the 6th installation of this series, and it will go to a 7th or an 8th. No, 7th is it. We're focusing now on the final chapter, and this final chapter is the steps to detox your mind. And tonight, I'm believing to get through maybe 2 of them, but these are the 2 biggest ones. So just as a quick review, not as long as I've done before, Part 1, God designed the mind and body. He knows how it works. We just do what He says. We get the results. Part 2, we saw another angle of what it says in Leviticus, that the life of the flesh is in the blood, because we learned that molecules of thought and emotion flow through the bloodstream. So it impacts your thought life, impacts your entire body, and it happens through the bloodstream. And then we looked at some of those misconceptions. Part 3, we took a deeper dive into fear, and we finished with the antidote. Part 4, we focused on the heart and the impact of our thought life on our heart, toxically, all the cardiovascular diseases, and positively on guarding our heart, where out of it are all the issues of life. Part 5, we looked at the importance of renewed mind, controlling our minds, or figuring it out, so to speak, in specific categories. Specifically, we looked at eliminating unforgiveness, getting rid of resentment and others, and being tenderhearted, forgiving one another. Resentment, unforgiveness is toxic. Tenderhearted, forgiving brings life. Tonight, we'll begin those detoxing steps. And I'll read from the book. You right now can turn to Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Before I get into the details, I'm going to ask you some questions. And you be honest with yourself. One of the questions I'm going to ask you is, are you honest? We'll get there. But be honest with yourself. Anytime recently, have you made a could have, would have, or should have statement? Could have, would have, or should have? How many if onlys, like if I only did this, if I only did that, have been a part of your thinking or conversation anytime lately? How many times have you replayed a conversation or situation in your head that was painful? It had pained you, and so you replayed it. I mean, we all do that, right? Not good. How many scenarios have you created of the unpredictable future? I'm sure when you read a headline about something going on and you get a scenario of something that hasn't even occurred yet, unpredictable future. How much time do you spend speculating? Is your mind passive? Are you honest with yourself? Because with that one, you got to go back and say, did I answer those first ones honestly about my own self? Did you go through the motions of the day, not really committed to a goal, saying one thing but meaning another? Has that occurred? Is your thinking distorted? Are you forming a personal identity around a problem or disease? Do you speak of my arthritis or my multiple sclerosis? Can't even say that right. Or my heart problem, or my diabetes, or my high blood pressure. In other words, you're personalizing it. Do you ever make comments like, nothing ever goes right for me. Everything I touch fails, or I always mess up? If you answered yes to even one of any of those, your thought life needs detoxing right now. That's what she says. Even one of them, you need detoxing. Consciously controlling your thoughts is not just the first step in this process, it is the main step. And that's why we'll spend the most time on this first one, which is consciously control your thoughts. Romans chapter 12, verse 3, you look at it in the King James. I'm going to read it to you from the literals, according to usage. Romans chapter 12, verse 3. But I say to you, because of the grace that was given me for all of you, control your thinking, not to get out of bounds by feeding your mind. Now, the Greek word used in the text for this word mind is the Greek word phronema. And the word mind is a noun. Phronema is the noun usage. So, by feeding your mind with respect only to the measure of faith God has given to every man. So we see here, control your thinking and feed your mind. Don't have your mind just go off scavenging in the sewers. You feed it. Romans 12:3, great verse. Now that's the literal according to usage. We're going to come back to phronema. That's why I pointed it out. So here I'm just going to throw out some different comments she makes in the book regarding consciously control your thoughts. Most back pain stems from psychological problems rather than physiological. Thoughts do cause illness and should thus be studied and controlled. If they are powerful enough to make us sick, then they are powerful enough to make us healthy as well. Wow. So then she talks about consciously controlling your thoughts, talks about analyzing thoughts before you decide whether to accept it or reject it. Says, how do you go about doing that? By looking at your mental process. It's possible to learn about your mental processes and then actively get involved in changing them. And that's where we'll go when we look more at phronema. In fact, it's not just possible, she writes, but it is essential. It's essential. What is essential? That we learn about our mental processes and then actively get involved in changing them. Toxic emotions arise from three negative and incorrect beliefs that people commonly think. And for some of us, this is going to be mind-numbing. Because when I read these to you, you're going to be like, no, that's how I've always been. Number one, I must do well. I must do well. That's a negative and incorrect belief. Ooh. Number two, you must treat me well. That's a negative and incorrect belief, which results in toxic emotions. Oh, she explains. I won't go deep into all of them, but I'll give you a little bit more. The world must be easy. That's the third one. The world must be easy. These may sound like harmless thoughts, but in reality, they are toxic. In real life, no one does well all the time. Everyone is mistreated sometimes, and life is not always easy or fair. End of story. So then she explains why I must do well seems positive, but when you look at it closely and analyze the feelings it generates because we don't always do well become toxic. That's why they're unrealistic. And she finally says, I'm not reading all this to you, but ditch unrealistic thinking, unrealistic expectation, and just do your best. I added just do your best. There are 4 simple techniques involved in this first step of controlling your thought life. Don't try to write all these down. I'm not going to read it all, but one is understand how thoughts form. Well, we've gone over that a little bit, but if you really want to understand it, get this book, go over chapter 2. She goes in detail. I know it's technical, but it's worth the read. 2 is use your brain's natural strainer. Now, I'm going to boil that down a little bit when I say use your natural strainer, because she gets into all the natural strainer parts, like the corpus callosum, the structures of the limbic system, the network of memories and neurons and the magic trees and all that. But I'm going to break that down for something simpler that you've heard elsewhere. Emotions are your feedback mechanism. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? That's your feedback mechanism. That's your strainer. That's telling you, if you're not feeling well right now, if you're not feeling good mentally, that tells you something's not right. Start checking what you're thinking. It's your strainer. It alerts you. If you're feeling great, hey, you're doing good. Keep moving. Keep going in that direction. Third one is make a conscious decision to accept the thought if it is good or reject it if it is bad. Fourth, deal with emotional strongholds and build strong memories. And this comes down to a concept of this whole thing of using the strainer of asking, answering, and discussing. Asking, answering, and discussing. The ask, answer, discuss technique allows your corpus callosum, don't I sound intelligent, and frontal lobes to effectively sift information. Well, another great verse, if you'll turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 10, along these lines of this ask, answer, discuss technique, this is a verse that makes me think of. And it's really the second part of this verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. In the King James we read, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. The literal is, be wise, lead captive every thought to Christ, which you have attentively listened to and heard. Ask, answer, discuss. And it's okay to talk it out loud. How many times do we say even read the word out loud to yourself? Because now you're getting multiple senses going, and it makes a greater impact in your mind. How many times we talk about read a verse and say it out loud that you're memorizing? It helps you retain it quicker and better. Saying it out loud is very helpful. So talk it out with yourself at times. Never let thoughts just wander through your mind unchecked. Oh, that's a national pastime. You guys never do it, but we all do it. We all just veg, we kind of zone, and we just, thoughts go wandering through our brain. Before you know it, we're not feeling well, we're bummed, we're bugged, and we're wondering why. And then when we track it back mentally, Kim's really good at this. I'm not as good as she is. She can track it back and see where the thinking started that got her down the road of that, and then deal with it. Yeah, we like to feel good. Da-na-na-na-na. Never let thoughts just wander through your mind unchecked. If they are toxic, they will eventually make you sick. Thoughts are real things with substance, and as such, they need to be controlled. Until you have your thoughts and attitudes under control, no amount of knowledge, no skill, or medication can help you to truly detox. You will need courage and perseverance to confront and control your thoughts. Sounds undaunting, isn't it? But really it isn't. Once you start doing it, just like anything else, it becomes easy. And I'm nowhere near having even begun to say I've even started. Correct positive thinking is also shown to grow your brain. The brain grows when new connections form. Even as you get older, you can continue to increase your intelligence without limits. Teach a dog new tricks, old dog, new tricks, as long as the input is positive and healthy. Cutting-edge brain research over the past few decades shows that intelligence is not static, but can be enhanced or reduced by your neurochemistry. You control your neurochemistry by your thought life. Therefore, you can make yourself healthier and smarter. So soon you'll be able to call me a smart boopy. No, just kidding. Expletive, deletive, smart butt. All right, let's turn to Romans chapter 8. I'm going to go to a couple verses here regarding this word phronema. Thoughts, the noun, and phroneo, the verb. And here in Romans, boy, there's a bunch. There's a bunch. Romans chapter 8, verse, and we'll start with verse 3. For what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. Now here we go. For they that are after the flesh do what? Mind, phronema, have the mind of the things of the what? Flesh. But they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. Verse 6. For to be carnally what? Minded. That's the verb form. That's not the noun. So this is to have carnal thinking, to be thinking carnally. To have carnal thinking is oh, I skipped a verse. Oh, I skipped a bunch of verses, didn't I? What verse was I on? 6. Okay. For to be carnally minded, to be carnally minded is what? So ultimately, the carnal mindedness, the worldly knowledge, dwelling on the things of the world, like Romans 12:2 tells us not to be, ultimately is what leads people to premature death. Instead, verse 6, but to be spiritually minded, having spiritual thoughts, look what it is. Life and what? Remember the first part of this that some of you that were at the advanced class haven't heard? The first part where God just tells you what to do and you get the results. He didn't explain how it works. But now we're understanding more how it works and how thoughts produce toxicity in our brain or good stuff in our brain that feeds our entire bodies. Verse 7, because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God. So there you go. You see the two sides of the thinking and what it does to our bodies. If we have all these thoughts of the world all the time, we're going to have to think things in the world. We got work to do. We've got other things to do, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about negatives that build emotional chains that this whole tightly knit, tied in system ends up causing toxicity in it. Not every thought causes toxicity. You understand that. We've covered a lot of that already, so I'm not going to go over it. But read the book. You'll get more of it. So, Philippians chapter 2. A couple more verses on this, and then we'll cover one more step. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. Let this what? Mind. Let this mind. It's not the noun, phronema. It's the verb, phroneo. Let this mind, or let your thinking, let what you think about, let this mind, what you think about, be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. I'm going to read the literal. It'll make more sense to you. That's all your puzzlement. Philippians chapter 2, verse 5. The literal of this verse is, think those thoughts. That's action. That's the verb. Think those thoughts that Jesus Christ thought. Think those thoughts that Jesus Christ thought. They are life, and they are peace, and they are health, all your flesh. Colossians chapter 3, verse 2. Set your affection. The word affection is the verb, phroneo. Set your affection, set your thinking on things above, not on things on the earth. There it is again. Set your thoughts on things above, not on things of the earth. Set your thoughts on things above. So that's the first detox. Control our thinking. And it is essential that we do so. Jeez, how many pages was it? Consciously control your thoughts. And I'm going to repeat this. Consciously controlling your thoughts is not just the first step in the process, it is the main step. Without that, the others don't matter. The second one is frame your world with your words. Can anybody tell me where else that comes from? I've only said it 1,000,000 times over the last, I don't know, I'm making that million up. Frame your world with your words. Where in Volume 1 can you tell me you get that from, since you're teaching it? Release from your prisons. Chapter 1. Right? Frame your world with your words. Say what you want. Don't say what you don't want. Say what you want. And also, I've brought up the secret. Say what you want, not what you don't want. The words you speak are electromagnetic life forces that come from a thought inside your brain and are influenced by your 5 senses. They contain power and work hand in hand with your thought life, influencing the world around you and the circumstances of your life. Volume 1, Chapter 1, The Secret, all the stuff we've heard. When you make negative statements, you release negative chemicals. What you do, and now here's the big key. Here's the big key, and I want you to turn to Mark, chapter 11, please. Mark, chapter 11. Here's the big key in all this. I am talking about much more than just positive thinking, because framing your world with words is not just about talking positively. Your words have to be backed up with honesty and integrity. What you do and say on the outside must reflect what you think on the inside. A lack of congruence causes stress and affects the way information is processed and memory is built. So in effect, it is not positive thinking, but congruent thinking that creates necessary changes in your brain. Think, say, do. The synchronized life. Think, say, and do. Confession of belief yields receipt of confession. Volume 1, Chapter 4, The Synchronized Life. Confession of belief yields receipt of confession. Mark, chapter 11, verse 23. We'll read it right out of the Word. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, there's the saying of it, right? Be thou removed, and be thou cast in the sea, and shall not doubt where? In his heart. There's the internal. Those two have to be in congruence. But shall also what? Believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass. Then he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, there's the outward confession, so to speak, that when you pray, do what? Believe, there's the inward congruence, the outward confession, the inward congruence, that ye receive them, and ye shall is absolute, have them. Now, let me just state that there's 2 ways to look at this verse, and you should look at it both ways, because both apply. By saying to that mountain, be removed and go cast into the sea. Well, that sounds like the impossible at your command. So now you're thinking it's only word of knowledge, word of wisdom, and a manifestation of believing and miracles. Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because regular believing can come into effect here. Just go look over it. Is it the EAU? Where they've taken all that dirt and put it in that water, and now they've got island out there. That's a manifestation of believing. Taking a mountain and old dozer shovel after dozer shovel after dozer shovel with believing action, pull down a mountain and put it in the ocean. Right? Isn't that what they've done over there? So that's regular believing to see something happen. And there may even be manifestation of believing involved in it as well. But they said, we're going to make an island out of the middle of this body of water, and we're going to make it look spectacularly cute. However, some of you have seen the pictures, right? You know what I'm talking about over there. You're puzzled. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? What was it called? Yeah. UAE. Sorry, I meant UAE. All right, I messed it up. Edit that out on the recording. UAE. Sorry, United Arab Emirates. EAU. I don't know what that is. But they built an island in water just by moving dirt. See, but that took believing. They said they're going to do it. They meant it, and they believed it. And dozer after dozer, they did it. The mountain just didn't pick up and drop itself in. That would be a whole different set of circumstances. That would be a miracle. And I don't know that we'd ever see that kind of thing. I mean, 99 and 44 100% is going to be regular believing. And where did I get the 44 100%? Some of you know that is Ivory soap. It's 99 and 44 100% soap. That used to be the joke for years. So that's the second one. And then I'm just going to read a couple more of these because I'm not going to go into them. Express your emotions. And you're going to say, well, express your emotions. Yes, express them. Because when you hold them in, eventually, like that closet door where you shove everything in it before guests come over and it pops open right in front of everybody, eventually your emotions are going to explode in front of everybody at the wrong time because you've been repressing them. Here are some signs of someone that has suppressed emotions. Irritability, short temper, overreacting, anxiety, frustration, fear, impulse, a desire for control. Now, you wouldn't ever equate that one to that, right? But that is a characteristic, a desire for control of someone that's been suppressing emotions. Perfectionism and self-doubt. Expressing emotions is an important step to detoxing the brain. I'm not talking about screaming at the top of your lungs, just expressing them, getting them out. Doesn't the word say that Jesus Christ looked round about on them with blank face? No. What does it say? Round about on them with anger. Anger is an emotion, but he didn't suppress it. He dealt with it. He didn't go off the handle necessarily, but the anger was there. It was expressed, but it must have been expressed in a biblical way because he never broke sin or broke fellowship. He never sinned. That was 3. 4 is take responsibility and take control. I'm not going to say anything more about that. Take responsibility. Too many people want to blame somebody else. It's your fault, Jeff, that I fell asleep last night and you didn't call me so we can pray. No, I fell asleep and didn't call Jeff and we didn't pray, you heathen. and I'll hit the 5th one. And I'm not going to dwell on the 5th one either. You can read about the 5th one because take it or leave it on this 5th one is dream on. And she talks about the work your mind does at night to clean up things in your brain, and you actually dream, you actually feel and live through things. And if you sleep sound and wake up out of sleep, you don't remember any of them. But she talks about when you wake up, write your dreams down because they're actually stuff they're doing. The glial cells are cleaning things up, and it's triggering things. And you've got all these dreams going on. That gets weird. So do with it what you want. And I'm going to mention 2 more because we've already covered them. 6 and 7. 6 is think forgiveness. We covered that in the last session. And 7 is love. We covered that in the last 2. One on heart and one in the last session. Love. And it's subtitled, Tune into Your Heart. Your heart that has its own memory cells. So that's the first 7, and we'll cover the last 6 next week.